Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Christian Dating Game podcast with me, Jack Peach. This is episode 10, week 10 that I've been running this live stream now, and I just want to thank everyone for joining me, thanking everyone for being here. A reminder, as I say every week, this is live on Twitter, this is live on Instagram, this is live on YouTube as well. It's live on all three platforms, so you will find it on whichever platform suits you best, whichever you find easiest to join. It'll be there. But I've got a really good, exciting episode today. I've got some big topics. I'm going to be explaining the concept of emotional alchemy, which is something that I've coined myself. It's something that is incredibly important for actually building connections with women. And the reason why it's so important is because it's basically how you transform a woman's emotional water into wine. How do you take her from one mood to another mood? And this is the heart of good attraction. And how do we do this as a Christian man? And that's really what I'm going to be talking about a lot today, as well as some discussions on flirting. Now, again, a little reminder for everyone, like this is also got a live Q&A aspect. You can always ask me questions. If you want to get something from me, you want to learn something from me, please ask me those questions so that we can drive this conversation forward. This is ultimately my act of service towards you guys. This is one way that I can serve my audience in a free way where you can get access to my brain for free. I mean, you don't have to pay me for a consultation or for a coaching program. This is a great way for you to take advantage of that, and asking questions is one way you can get a personalized look into that. I'm also going to be keeping this one a little bit shorter than normal. I'm going to be taking my son to swimming lessons in a bit. So I've been teaching him to swim anyway. I've been getting comfortable with the pool, just me and him. And he went with his grandma as well, with me and his grandma the other day as well. But we've got a free trial at a proper swimming lesson, which I'm interested to check out and see if that will be better than me just teaching him to swim myself, which I'm quite excited to do, to be quite honest. I'm also, for those who are interested, I am drinking an Indonesian coffee today. I'm drinking something from Pangalengan, which is in West Java. Like most West Javan coffee, it's very fruity, kind of a tamarind sourness going there with a bit of sweetness. It's a very easy drinking coffee and very, very pleasant. Nothing too out there, which is kind of what I'm into at the moment. I'll be quite honest. So I go through phases, but good coffee is always got to be there. It's always got to be there. So without further ado, I will say a quick little prayer and we'll get into this little shindig. So please bear with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time of sharing that I can use to share with my audience some wisdom. Pray that you will always guide me with wisdom in these circumstances, that I will preach strengthening and insightful messages for the people at home, and that they will have open hearts and open ears to receive these messages so that it can help them find a relationship, and a godly relationship which leads to marriage, which is ultimately what you want from us and what we want also. So Lord, we just thank you and bless this time with insight in my words, and pray this to you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let's get into it. So emotional alchemy. This is a term that I have coined. I think it's something that every man needs to learn how to do. Now, most of the people watching this at home, I'm going to assume you guys are single because that is, my audience and who I primarily talk to. But this is also something that is really, really, really important for being in a relationship as well. And it's a skill that will set you apart from other men throughout life. And it doesn't just help you during the dating process, It helps you then build and maintain relationships the older you get. And I still use this, every day in my dating life. And I use it just as social settings in general, to be quite honest with you, because it's such a powerful technique and method. And, if you ever look at some of my longer testimonials from people who have just finished up working with me, you'll notice a lot of them will talk about how I transform their mind or transform the way they interact with the world or interact with people. And that concept, that idea that they have there, actually is all born out of teaching them emotional alchemy. Okay, now emotional alchemy is a very simple thing to understand. The reason I like this terminology is because it is about transforming both your emotions, but also the people around you's emotions as well. And as I already described, it's how we turn emotional water into wine. Like Jesus was the only real true alchemist. He was the person who was able to actually change one substance to another. And we can do something akin to this in how we communicate with women and with other people as well. So it's something that you really need to learn how to do if you are looking to have a good marriage. Ultimately, that's what you really need, if that's what you're looking for in your life, whether it's to find it or to maintain it. So, and again, guys, if you have any questions, if there's anything you want to ask me, please feel free to chime in. This is how you run, this is how you can help me direct this show. So how do we turn these emotions into wine, and why? Before we talk about how, let's talk about why it's important. Now, most of you guys follow me will probably come out of a more kind of masculine, kind of red pill, way of looking at the world, or a Christian way of looking at the world, which is more sexually dimorphic. It understands that there are sexual differences between men and women in the way we act and behave. Saying that nowadays, if I was in Britain right now, maybe I'd be arrested by the police. I don't know, by the way things going over there. But luckily, I don't live in Britain anymore. I saw this ship sinking a long time ago. And I lost my train of thought there again, getting lost in bloody what's going on in my home country. But yeah, we come from this understanding that there are differences between men and women. And one of the main differences, particularly in communication style between men and women, is the way that we connect with people. Now, if you've ever been in a social setting with your friends, you've been with people that you want to spend time with, there will you have probably, or people you've just met who are men, you've probably had good interactions with guys who were, which were based on kind of like a logical exchange of information, right? And you can even see this in like what kind of Twitter content chimes well with men compared to women as well, online content in general. Like men like more value laden approaches where they can really see like, oh, okay, there's this really great information that I'm learning from this, and that's interesting to us. Whereas women, that can still obviously be interested to them, but they care much more about the way that content makes them feel. And again, you can look at this in terms of who reads nonfiction compared to fiction, right? It's not like only men read nonfiction and only women read fiction, but as a general principle, men tend to enjoy nonfiction more than women do, and women tend to enjoy fiction more than men do. Although if you're a man and you can't enjoy fiction, come on, guys, these stories touch us in a human level. But anyway, that's by the by. This is more to illustrate the point of communication styles. And again, if you've been with your friends, you can probably, like I had a friend, a guy that I used to live with when I used to live in Thailand. We used to live on this kind of like a in a village. We were both working in a school there. We used to live in like almost like this plantation. It was a lychee plantation on a coffee shop. So our friend, it's Thai guy, owned the coffee shop, ran the coffee shop, but he also had this land, and he had like these chalets on the land that all the Westerners, we all kind of lived there in this little village we were living in. And one of the guys there, I won't say his name, but he was, he was mildly autistic. He wasn't like fully unable to function. He was a teacher there, but he was pretty autistic, and he'd fit in well in our corner of Twitter. And for me, I found talking to him very interesting. He always had some interesting insights. His communication style I found entertaining. He'd say things that were a bit off the cuff, and for me it was funny. But my wife, for example, I think she'd been my fiance at that point, couldn't deal with him. She found him very difficult to deal with because the way he communicated and the style of communication made her feel like, I can't get into this guy, right? I can't understand what he's talking about. Where some of the other guys she had no problem being friends with. And that's a really great illustration of the difference between men and women and how we communicate. Men love an exchange of information. Women don't. Now, this can be a challenge for guys who, adapting to this can be a real challenge for guys who haven't had a lot of experience dating, and maybe more of their friends are men, or they are communicating with women in social settings which are connected to work. I'll often hear guys, I have no problem talking to women at work, or my friends' wives and stuff, but as soon as it gets onto a date or a woman I'm intimate with, like, I just freeze up. I don't know what to say, or I can't seem to connect with them. And that's because these guys are not committing and not using emotional alchemy. Okay, they are using the same logical way of communicating they would with men, with women. And as a rule, this doesn't work. Again, a little bit of it, you're still a man at the end of the day. You're going to do that from time to time. You're going to mansplain and stuff like that. And that can be attractive in the right setting. But it has to be blended with this understanding that women have another thing, another vibe they're trying to get from communication, and that is that emotional undercurrent. Okay. And by the way, if you're a guy who can communicate those logical values, like one of the things I'm doing here is when I'm communicating with you, I'm using some of the techniques I teach to my clients to make it more engaging. Right? When a guy can express his emotional undertone through his communication with value, you are going to listen to that guy so much more than you are the guy who can just communicate the same value, but without the emotional undertones. If he's not able to perform emotional alchemy, he's going to be less charismatic as well. Like the example of my friend that I was talking about in Thailand, if he could actually communicate in this way, he would have way more friends and way more social connections, and would have, probably been more successful in his professional field as well. Like a big thing that stops guys progressing, a lot of guys, nobody comes to me because they stop progressing in their work, but it is a pattern of guys who come work with me because often what holds people back, actually holds men back who have the skills in the workplace, is these kind of soft skills. Again, a former client of mine, one of the reasons he decided to reach out and work with me is actually because he got denied a promotion he was looking for. And he kind of felt like, well, I don't want to put as much effort into work as I did previously because I was putting so much effort into my job to try and get this promotion. And then I didn't get it. I'm going to redirect that energy into getting this area of my life sorted, which was to find a girlfriend and find an eventual wife. He was a Catholic. He is in a relationship as we speak after working together. And one of the other things that actually happened is he ended up getting that promotion after working with me, because what was holding him back was not his job skills. It wasn't how he put himself. It was how he communicated and delegated and was able to manage people. And this can often be a bottleneck for guys at work as well. This is why emotional alchemy is so important. It's just a form of communication where you become aware of your own emotional state and how your emotional state interacts with other people, and therefore how you can change and transform your own emotional state, your own emotional state, and that can transform the state of other people's emotions, other women's emotions. And you're able to communicate and connect in a way which is so much more engaging, and you're able to get kind of, outcomes, and you're much more persuasive. There is got to be careful with using the word persuasion when it comes to dating, but to some degree, all communication is persuasion. And to some degree, you are being persuasive during dating, where you're kind of persuading this person to spend more time with you. And then over that time they spend that time with you, they decide whether or not they fall in love with you, right? That's how you fall in love with someone, is you spend enough time with them and you open up enough with them that you get to see who they really are, and then you fall in love. That's how I view dating. That's the process of dating, is how can we make ourselves as attractive as possible to persuade women to spend more time with us until that switch kind of triggers and they realize, like, actually, I really like this guy, and that, normally happens sort of 4 or 5 dates in, and then the love comes a little bit later. And at that point you focus less on persuasion, more on genuine intimate connection. And again, I'm quite a logical guy. I have a more logical view to dating than most people, which is why I think I get so much success compared to my competitors. Because I have actually systematized dating, and emotional alchemy is part of it. And it is an abstract concept, but it's a systematized abstract. I've broken down this very abstract, out there thing, emotional connection. Women are emotional. What does that mean? How can you apply it? And I've broken down how to do that and how you can apply it in a systematized way, which for logical guys who have a logical brain is very, very valuable. In the first 4 to 6 weeks of my program, I just teaching this system to guys and getting them to practice it and experience it. And it normally they'll get some kind of epiphany within that time. And after that, everything's easy, basically. And by the way, this is one of the things that I am going to be like, I'm obviously not going to reveal that system to you in this free, live stream, because it requires building on certain things, and you have to go out there and experience certain things and then build on it. And it's an iterative process, but also it would be kind of revealing, the nuclear codes to any potential competitors who are watching. And it would be like, well, why bother working with me? Because, you can get this information for free anyway. I do gatekeep information. Like, I just do. This is ultimately a business, and maybe I shouldn't admit that. Maybe I shouldn't be so honest and, try and pretend that I give everything away for free, but I don't. I'll tell you right now, for you guys watching it, I don't. If you're on my newsletter, you'll get more of it. If you join, for example, I'm running a masterclass this weekend on Sunday at 9 p.m. EST for people who want to join. You will get a lot of the system there. You'll get how to actually, understand that. But that's, again, because you paid an entrance fee to get that information. I'm never going to reveal that system on one of these free live streams, I'm afraid. I would be a fool to do that. Basically, I would just be a fool. And I may be many things, but I don't think I'm a fool. At least I don't think so. Maybe you disagree. So the way that we actually can transmute these emotions and turn a woman's emotions from water into wine is to understand that all these emotions are connected, right? And it all comes down to the way we feel and becoming aware of the way we feel. You'll sometimes hear me talk about emotional blockages. This is actually one way that you are conducting emotional alchemy unconsciously and in the wrong way. Okay. What do I mean by that? Well, if you are feeling nervous, insecure, you're feeling uncomfortable, and then you bring up this, this emotional alchemy, and you begin to, you feel that discomfort, and that causes you to subconsciously use these blockages, which cause you to disconnect and break connection with women. That is going to harm you. And that is a way that women feel like, oh, this guy is not actually interested or involved in this. He's not interested in me. It can happen in many different ways, but it breaks connection. And it basically will often signal to women that, oh, he's not interested in me, and therefore I'm not interested in him, because it's a reciprocal thing. Communication is symbiotic. This is a core concept behind emotional alchemy, is like, by changing the way you feel, you change the way other people feel. Like, what you feel, she feels, and what she feels, you feel. That's why you can walk into a date and immediately know, okay, there's attraction here, because you're feeling what she's feeling and she's feeling what you're feeling, and you're both getting that. You're both getting that, you're both experiencing that, and it becomes this symbiotic thing. So when you feel a certain way and you feel negative, you feel withdrawn, you feel insecure, you begin to overthink, she begins to feel that, and that makes her disconnect. It makes her feel awkward. It makes her feel anxious. And that causes her to disconnect. And this is the way you're already committing emotional alchemy, but you're doing it in an unconscious way that is not helping you and is actively sabotaging your relationships. And you need to learn to change this so that you can connect with her emotions consciously. You can move her, you can direct her, you can allow these connections to go in the direction you want. And that leads me to the next topic about flirting. Because flirting is a form, it's one form of emotional alchemy, because the branch and the root of all communication is this alchemical process of turning women's emotions from water into wine. And flirting is one way you do that. Flirting is essentially communicating your sexual interest and your sexual attraction to a woman and allowing that to moderate and impact her sexual attraction towards you. It becomes reciprocal. It becomes something that she wants to feel from you, and that she then begins to view you in that light through the act of flirting. Now, a lot of guys worry about flirting, particularly Christian men. They worry, another thing they really worry about is leading girls on, right? This is something I hear so often. I don't want to lead her on. I don't want to go on a date with her because I don't want to lead her on. I don't want to go on a second date with her because I don't want to lead her on. I'm not sure if I want to be in a relationship, so I don't want to lead her on. I'm not sure about her. I'm not sure if that sexual chemistry is there, so I don't want to flirt because I don't want to lead her on. Man, how often do I hear this? And this is such a dangerous attitude, because how do you know whether that sexual chemistry is there without exploring it? How do you know, if you're waiting just for that one date where you really know from the first date, this is the woman for me, I'm going to marry this woman on the first date, that shows there's something wrong with you. Now, yes, you can have much greater initial attraction to one woman than another woman based on that initial first date. But if you go through the dating process, that attraction can wane as you see other aspects of her character. On the other hand, a woman you have less attraction with in the first place, you don't have that boom sexual chemistry from the off, they're often the girls that you end up finding out, 3 or 4 dates in, like, wow, there's a depth to this woman that is so much more attractive than I realized. I've had clients who have been on dates with girls, and I've kind of forced them to go, look, I think you should go, at least give this 2 or 3 dates to figure it out. Oh, but I don't want to lead her on. But you're not leading her on. All you're doing is figuring out whether there is actually something there. It only becomes leading her on when you know there's nothing there for sure. She wants something from you. She wants more from you. You know you don't want more, but then you keep seeing her, keep messaging her, you keep spending time with her because it validates your ego. You get something from that experience, and you are basically using her for you to feel good when you have no intention of doing any more. That is leading someone on, not going on 2 or 3 dates with them or flirting with them when you're not quite sure yet. If you never flirt with a woman, you're never going to feel that sexual chemistry ever at any point. And I'll give an example of one of my clients. He went on first date with a girl, and she was pretty attractive. There was something there, but he didn't feel that wow chemistry. And I told him, well, that doesn't really mean much. At least you have some attraction there. You did flirt a little bit. Let's go on a second date. Let's go on a third date. Let's see where it goes. Okay. And I had to push him a little bit to do this. And, I kind of reminded him as well, you're not getting 5 dates, every 2 weeks. You get 1 date every 2 weeks or so. That's good. He got 1 date in a year before working with me. So 1 date, 2 dates a month is much better than that. But it's still not a position where you can be, the most fussy guy, right? You know, the phrase beggars can't be choosers come to mind. And that's something else I see. Guys who are getting no dates and they want the perfect woman. Well, that's not going to happen. Beggars can't be choosers, guys. If you want to get a great woman, if you don't want to settle, you need to get consistent dates first. Okay. That's why I always focus on that first with clients. And again, that's why so many of my clients end up in good relationships with women they're happy with in the end, because they get to a position where they can choose rather than having to accept what they can get. And even as a Christian man, you need to be in that position. Otherwise, you are going to probably have an unhappy marriage, unfortunately. There's nothing worse than settling for the wrong woman. You know, that's a lifelong commitment. You've got to get the right one. It's the biggest, most important decision you will make in your life. You've got to give yourself the skills and the ability to make that, make the correct decision, guys. Yeah, anyway, in this situation, he had this first date with her. He had that initial chemistry. It was there. It was nothing amazing. And then I told him, go on a second date, go on a third date with her. If you get 3 dates in and you feel the same, no worries. At least you allowed it to play out, and therefore you could find that out. And on the third, it might have been on the fourth date, I remember him kind of writing in his field report, which is what every client does for me. They write field reports. So I have an intimate understanding of what they're going through. And he was like, there was this point in the day where suddenly he realized actually she was way more attractive than he thought. And what's happened there is you've allowed the emotional alchemy to transform her in the way you view her, because suddenly after 3 or 4 dates, you have an emotional connection with this woman that you've built. And suddenly you see through just the initial superficial facade of how attractive is she physically, which is part of it. And you kind of see her soul in that moment. And suddenly she's beautiful, right? Like, wow, you're actually attractive in a way that I didn't realize before. And that's the process of actually beginning to fall in love with someone. Okay. And if he had kind of given into that first initial feeling of, I don't want to flirt, I kind of don't want to, lead her on. I don't want to make her think that there's something more to this than there is. He wouldn't be in that relationship that he's in today. He might be in a relationship with someone else. I don't know, but he's happy in the relationship. She was a good woman. I could sense that from the way she was acting on the first date. It's the other thing, sometimes I have I do this for a living. In 1 week, I can meet 8 girls. You know what I mean? I go on dates with 8 girls vicariously through my clients. And if you extrapolate that over the course of the 4 years that I've been doing this, I have a level of experience with women that most guys cannot get, like even Casanova style guys, because like I'm living through my clients' experiences. I'm seeing women every week and seeing these patterns of behavior, and I'm seeing which of these ones then go on to be good girlfriends and act well. And I have all this identification cues that just comes from the experience of having done this for years, which you cannot gain, as an individual man living through this. You just cannot gain that level of experience. And again, especially if you're getting older, you're in your 30s or late 20s, and it's kind of, you get that kind of time pressure of like, I need to kind of find the right one sooner rather than later. Having someone who can kind of help you really identify who is a good woman in 2 or 3 dates, as opposed to having to spend 6 months and figure it out, or just make the wrong judgment, misread some of these little social cues that happen, these red flags that people like to talk about. It can save you a lot of time and definitely a lot of heartache as well, which is a real, there are real consequences to getting dating wrong. People like to think, guys like to think, I can just do it on my own. I can figure this out on my own. It's not that difficult. It's just women. Like, why should I need help with this? Dude, the social consequences. I talk with, I think I've mentioned this before, but I talked with a guy about a month or 2 ago who literally had to leave churches because of the way that he dealt with a dating situation with a girl there. It caused a split in his friendship group. He lost friends over it. There are real social consequences to getting this wrong. And that's never mind marrying the wrong woman. This is a lifelong covenant before God that you're entering into. You got to get that right, guys. Like, And if you're getting one date every 6 months, one date every 3 months, one date every year, you're going to have so much pressure to kind of force those situations. Then, like one of my clients who just finished up working with me, who got 15 dates in 12 weeks. He's been on 3 dates, and since we finished, we're still in touch. He didn't need any more kind of like intense working because he got what he needed from the program, which is always my MO is I want to get you to the point where you don't need to work with me. If you're working with a dating coach, you're still with them after a year, 2 years, like except for exceptional cases, that means they're not, they're doing something wrong, guys, and they're just trying to take your money at that point. But it's it's important to understand that you need to get this right, and there are consequences for it. And learning emotional alchemy, learning how to flirt, connecting with women, getting consistent dates are irreplaceable skills for what is the most important decision you'll make in your life, which is who is the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, who's going to be the mother of my children, who's going to help me raise my children, who's going to be the person who supports me in the downtimes when I'm sick, is going to be there for me to look after me. You need to get the right woman, and leaving this to luck, chance, or not putting a concerted effort into it is the only person you're hurting is yourself by doing that. And I think it's just really important that guys understand how important that is. And again, if you do want just some low level guidance, obviously not everyone can afford to work with me or wants to pay, several $1,000s to work with me one-on-one, where you're talking to me every week. And getting all the coaching material and everything else, getting support from me and all my worksheets, getting that nuance look into your personal situations. But if you just want, a guide to how to flirt and to connect with women and to learn how to use emotional alchemy, then I do have a masterclass that I'm holding this week. It's pretty cheap for what you're going to get from it, to be quite honest. And I am even throwing in 30 days of free email coaching alongside that. And if you want to find out more about that program, that masterclass and how it works and everything, there is a link under this Twitter thread that you can click on and find out more. And I'll detail the exact process of actually learning to use emotional alchemy rather than just saying why it's so important as I am here. And it's not particularly expensive. The other thing that I see as well, talking about flirting, is like, why is flirting this big challenge and difficulty for Christian men compared to other men? And part of that is, again, there is this connection between lustful actions and sin, and therefore this misconception that all sexual interest is therefore lustful, which it's not. But there's also an element of sexual repression contained within Christian men that is not present within a lot of other communities. And again, having some level of, having some restrictions around sex is not a bad thing at all. And kind of creating boundaries around sex is, one of the worst things we've done in modern society is scale back those sexual boundaries. But at the same time, God does want us to go forth and multiply. He wants us to get married. A big part of the marriage covenant is a sexual relationship. There are whole chapters of the Bible that are dedicated to sexual intimacy. Sex in and of itself is not a bad thing. And flirtation is one form of sexual communication that is not inherently lustful. And when you have this kind of sexual repression around things, when you feel sexually repressed, that's when you will often be afraid to flirt. And this is something that, again, needs uncovering. I'll give an example of one of my current clients. He got married to his first wife. He's a Christian, but he's unfortunately divorced because of his sexual repression. When they got married, they were both virgins. They followed, God's teachings. But one of the reasons they were virgins and, was because they did have some degree of sexual repression. And when they got into the marriage, they were never able to iron that out. They were never able to overcome that real kind of sexual intimacy. And it was always a real challenge for them. And it eventually got to the point where that, Sexual intimacy is a form of physical intimacy. And physical intimacy and physical closeness is directly related to your emotional closeness and your emotional intimacy. This is why using physical touch is so important when dating. It's not because it's necessarily inherently sexual, although it obviously can be, but it's about when you use physical touch, you are saying that I'm emotionally close to this person. This is someone that I'm close with, and they can feel that closeness. And sex is a big part of that. It's a physical bonding. It's an emotional and spiritual process. And when you have these hang-ups, these sexual repressions that are putting these barriers up within the marital bedroom, it causes big problems. It causes big ripple effects. And as I say, he never was able to overcome. And they got counseling. They went to therapists, and they were never able to overcome this sexual repression because they hadn't. I think if they'd have resolved it beforehand, it would have been much easier than it was in the end. And it caused them to get divorced, and they do have kids together. Obviously, they were able to have sex. They just never had that real intimacy associated with sex, and it caused problems for their kids and everything else. And that was a real consequence to not getting ahead of this problem. We can sometimes see dating problems as superficial. If I just get to know someone, if I get into a relationship, it'll be fine. No, because the reasons and the problems you are facing during the dating process will continue to manifest during the relationship process, because there's always a root cause that is causing these problems within your dates, whether it is sexual repression or something else. Whether it's an emotional blockage, or it's your inability to connect with women's emotions through emotional alchemy. If you're unable to transform her emotions when she gets into negative moods, you're going to be unable to see through that. And these small, problems that flare up on a daily basis within marriages are going to turn into big conflagrations. And over time, it's going to wear down on your marriage. It's a big mistake that I see from a lot of guys is, oh, once I get into a relationship, I'll be fine. Like, that's a big assumption, my dude. That's a huge assumption. If you've never been there, or you've been in relationships and it didn't work out, why didn't it work out? And then why, once you got out of that relationship, when it was easier to get into relationships, maybe you're at university, you were surrounded by lots of young single women all the time, or, you were just younger at the church group and fell into a relationship at your church or your small group. Like, when that didn't work out, why did that work out? And why are you having the problems now to find a relationship? Because these problems are deep rooted. They're connected. And if you don't get to the root core of your emotional blockages and your inability to transform her emotions, because, the way that women feel is so important. Women don't care about, you can be the best husband for 5 years. In that moment, if you've pissed her off, it doesn't matter what you've done. She doesn't care. She only cares about what you feel right then. And if you're not able to manage that, and you're not able to transform her emotional water into emotional wine, that problem is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And, this happens even, this will happen even with the skills, by the way, but you can manage it so much better. You can sort out these situations so much better when you have these skills. It's why so many of my clients go on to get married, and have kids. I've got guys having kids, from they were clients 3 years ago. There's a reason for that, and it all comes down to these skills. Don't disconnect your dating skills from your relationships. Please. That's a bad idea. And if you want to learn how to conduct emotional alchemy, you want to learn how to flirt, how to overcome some of these sexual communication problems. As I say, I'm running a masterclass this Sunday. It's live. I'm going to be sharing exactly how to overcome all these things, the step-by-step processes I teach my clients. And you'll even get 1 month free one-on-one email coaching with me for no extra cost. And this is not an expensive program that you're going to be joining. It's a very, very, low cost affair. I've got the link to it under this Twitter thread. It's in my Instagram story if you're watching on Instagram, and it's also on what do I call it? YouTube is in the YouTube description box. They're the 3 platforms this is live on. So yeah, I really hope this is something that helps you guys to understand why this is so important, why you can't ignore these issues. And if you have any questions on this, you can feel free to DM me on, again, any of these platforms. Again, on YouTube, you can't DM me, but if you leave a comment, I'll get back to you. But if you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, please feel free to DM me. And if you just want to really solve these issues, check out the masterclass that I'm going to be running this Sunday. You don't have to watch it live. You'll get a recording either way. But I'm going to be detailing the actual step-by-step process of how you can actually learn to become an emotional alchemist, how you can turn women's emotional waters into wine, and how you can learn to flirt and build connections that will set you up, get you consistent dates, and set you up for a loving marriage in the future. It will, it's a very low cost way of getting, a big chunk of my, my internal brain that's going on there. So yeah, if you have any questions as well, please leave them, comment, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, leave your comments now. Otherwise, I'm gonna be thinking about closing up because I'm gonna be taking my son to his swimming lesson in about 20 minutes. So, and again, for those of you who don't realize, I'm in Indonesia. I'm 12 hours or so ahead of you Americans. So it's morning for me. That's why I'm drinking coffee and taking my son swimming. I'm not taking my son swimming at like 10 p.m. Don't worry. I am responsible. I'm a responsible parent, believe me. So yeah, any questions? If not, we'll leave it there. And I just want to thank you for spending your time with me this evening. I'm really grateful for the fact that you guys do choose to tune into this every week. I know there's some people who tune in every week, and there's some people who just, most of you guys probably just saw it and scrolling and interested and joined. But I want to thank you for that time. I do appreciate it. Time is very valuable. And putting that time into things is, I appreciate that's an investment that you are putting into this. So thank you guys. I pray you all have a wonderful evening, and I pray that this has helped you in some way. God bless, and I will see you next week at the same time for another episode of the Christian Dating Game Podcast. Take care and God bless. Okay, I just got a message right as I was about to leave it, so I will answer this. So guys, this is on Instagram, so I can't put it on screen. Adam, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to copy your comment, and I'm going to post it here so that everyone can see it. Okay, so this is what Adam just asked me on Instagram. I can't put Instagram comments on the screen. So he said, just ended a series of dating with a gal, and she said she was needing more time after 6 days. She's very closed off and wouldn't open up, thinking it was more her than me. Any insight there? Yeah, so when a girl says she needs more time, you need to listen to her. Right now, there's 2 factors to this where she might not be ready for a relationship, and if she's not ready for a relationship, you can't force her into that. The other aspect of this, which is somewhat connected to our situation, is that she might have more of an avoidant communication style. If, as you say, she was closed off and she was difficult to open up, and that requires this emotional alchemy that I'm talking about to be able to actually bring that vibe where she feels more comfortable to open up. Like there's 2 real areas, and this might not be you, right? Like I can't say for sure without talking to you, right? We're like one-on-one, and really uncovering the situation. I obviously can't, give you that information. And for the guys who are just joining, I see a bunch of people joining. It looks like I've asked this question. I've just copied it off Instagram because I can't put Instagram comments on the screen. And I always like to focus on what you can learn from it, right? Because we can't change other people. They are who they are. It's not up to us to change them. All we can do is to try and learn and, adapt and do better ourselves next time. It's just a great rule for life. And understand it might not be our fault, but there's still lessons that we can learn from it. And it could be an element of, there's 2 elements of attraction for every situation, every way we can view it. And women need both of these things. There's security and sexiness. Sexiness is that sexual chemistry that makes women feel like, okay, this is someone who's a potential husband. There's someone that I have some attraction to and want to get to know better. But there's also the element of security, which is like, do I feel secure enough and trust this guy to open up my heart? Because there is an inherent risk to opening up and being vulnerable with someone. Clues in the name, right? Vulnerability is, it's vulnerable. You can potentially get hurt, right? And we have to try and create the dynamic to make people feel more comfortable doing that. And, when girls have maybe been through a bad dating experience, they've been through a bad breakup, maybe a guy's treated them badly in the past, we have to do more to build that security with that girl than perhaps we would with another woman. And this is part of understanding that emotional alchemy and being able to key into this and tune in and be able to turn that insecurity and that closed up feeling and be able to transform that into wine of like, okay, there's this trust here and I can open up and build that. And there's a bunch of different ways that we can do that. I'm not going to go into here. But when a woman says that, there's two reasons. It's number one, she does just, she's just not ready for a relationship, in which case there's nothing we can do about it. Or number two, she's not ready for a relationship with you, which means we've not allowed her to build enough trust to do that. What it is, I can't tell you, obviously, just based on your comment. But hopefully, this gives some insight on what could have gone wrong. It could be more her than you, but it could also there could also be things that you can do better from it as well, for sure. So I hope that helped, Adam, and I appreciate the comment. And other guys, if you have questions you want me to answer on this live stream, obviously, please feel free to add them. This is part of why I do this. Is it's an act of service. My business is my ministry, and if I can help you guys out with specific situations like this, let me, ask me questions, because, I don't know what's going on in your dating lives unless you tell me. But yeah, appreciate the comment, Adam. Again, everyone else, I appreciate you spending this time with me. I hope you found it valuable. God bless. And I will see you next Thursday evening.